Hello, welcome to Farouk Khan's Sisonke Diski Chat, the first one for the year 2023. Happy New Year to you. I hope it's a fine year for you and that it brings you all your wishes. As most importantly, it brings nothing but glory for your club. Well, what a season 2022-2023 has been. Most unusual one as well, because we had right in the middle of it, or almost in the middle of it, a World Cup. So suddenly we had to take a break for 2 months. Now, what are the dynamics involved with that? What does that do from a management point of view as a coach? What do you do after that disruption? Because effectively, you were given here a challenge of a second preseason right in the middle of a season. How do you deal with that kind of thing? It also happened to come just before the opening of the second transfer window for the season. Again, more interesting calls that the coaches have to make. Do you beef up your squad? Have you got enough? How do you make the call when you have had a group of players that have been inactive for 2 months? Who better to ask? And my two guests this afternoon are well experienced and people who have managed their football squads for a very long time. Let's welcome first the 4-time Premiership winning coach, Gordon Igesund. Gordon, good to have you with us and welcome. You are looking well.
TT, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. Yeah, we've had a festival of soccer, especially the World Cup. You couldn't have written a script better than that, the way it went. But it's just great to be back now, and the work is out there for the coaches now. They've got to plan their squads. They've had an stop start season so far. But I think it's starting to get together again.
Yeah, absolutely. Now also with us here, Farouk Khan, coach, also great having you along. Yes, what an interesting time it's been that we've just come through.
Absolutely, it's been the first time, in the past couple of years, world football has gone through a difficult patch. We had COVID, and now the distractions that we find with the Qatar World Cup. How do coaches deal with that, with the congestion of fixtures? So it's really a learning curve for a lot of coaches around the world, how to deal with football from the 4 different perspectives, which is the physical, technical, tactical, and psychological aspects, and to ensure that you get the best out of your players. It's going to be interesting, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that, as I mentioned there, is that one of the calls that the coaches would have had to make is how do you manage that break? Do you give the players time off? How much time do you give them? And again, noting that this came, we were 3 months into the season and suddenly you have to stop. What kind of challenge would that present? I mean, no one has ever been presented with this sort of a challenge. How would you have handled it?
TT, it's huge challenges for players and for coaches as well, because not only is it a break and a period where you can have a break for a month or 2 months and then come back and have 2 months to start. It's stop, start. If I remember the Pirates games they were playing and Chiefs games they were playing, like one game before New Year. And then New Year came, the players would go and celebrate, and you come back and play a game 5 days afterwards. So there was a stop, start. And, managing the players, getting them to a level of fitness that you need them, getting them to understand each other. New players are getting signed, clubs are bringing in players, and these players don't get a chance to really have enough time to play together, get to know each other. So they're spending a lot of time getting to know each other during league games and cup games, whatever the case may be. So it's very, very difficult period to have a stop, start situation. But of course, the World Cup is probably a once-off at the time when the World Cup was had in November, So I think it's been difficult for everybody.
And coach, how would you view it then when you get the players back eventually? I mean, first of all, when you do give them, you have 2 months off.
Yeah.
But how long do you give them before you bring them back? And when they do come back, is that another preseason? Because you're not taking players who are completely off for a month, because that's what would happen in an ordinary off season. They will get at least a month off.
Well, I think it's very important to realize that periodization is very critical, and that's basically planning. It's not only for football. Any performance sport, any high level of sport requires good planning. So you have your preseason, and within the context of your preseason, you've got to plan this break. So you already knew the World Cup was going to take place. You knew that you're going to have a 9-week break. So obviously you've got to plan accordingly. That includes your scouting. That includes your preparation as far as the methods, the training methods, the philosophy, the style of play, all of those things, very scientific. But unfortunately, we got to keep up with the times when it comes to modern day football. The performances, TT, that you witness around the world is based on huge scientific input. That is why when you find clubs, and you often see 17, 20 people working for a club, it's because not one person can do everything. The coach is the leader, he's the general. He ensures that everybody around him add value. And I think, getting back to your question, when we do start the pre-season, we have a meeting with all role players that are involved with the club. That includes your scouting department, that includes your physical trainers, that includes your tactical coaches, your goalkeeper coaches. Today we're speaking about striker coaches, so that will also be a part. I mean, I was quite surprised to learn that Liverpool have a throwing coach.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it's a thing.
So it shows how the game has evolved. Now, without pointing fingers at anybody, if you fail to plan properly, you plan to fail. So these things we're talking about, and Gordon rightly put it, that you've got all these challenges that you're dealing with. Players coming back, integrating players, bringing new players in. How can they adjust? This is where your sports psychologist comes in. Because the coach in our environment, Gordon had to be the psychologist, he had to be the coach, he had to be the tactical coach, and they still succeeded because of the fact, played the game at the highest level, knew what is to be done, was streetwise enough to manage his players properly. So if we take that and break it down, if for any reason we don't plan properly, we're going to find ourselves in situations where we do crisis management. Team is not scoring, where's the next best striker?
Well, let's talk about the management now of the players, because you're managing human beings here. You're dealing with individuals with personalities. You've got this challenge now. You've got to keep them, make sure that they're focused, you know, and that whatever work that they're given to do on their own, they actually do that. So how do you do that and manage that over such a long period?
You know, Titi, you've got to be really hands-on. You know, you've got to obviously have a plan in place. The players have to know what that plan is. A lot of communication, a lot of management of players, a lot of talking to the players about what are you expecting for them when they come back. So obviously the norm is that they would have had a good test before they left their last game off their last game. They would have done a test to see exactly where they were. The coach would have given them a program, and he will not just leave it to them to go do it themselves. You know, the guys are not going to do it themselves. One might do it, they might miss one day, they might go to a party, and you know, you can't take those chances. They're professional football players, earning a lot of money, and the margins of success are so small. I mean, here's success, here's failure. Just one slip up. And I think that's very important. And once the players are bought into that, the coaches, and Farouk is quite right, you need to surround yourself with good people around you. So you know that when you've given the orders, that's what you want, and how you want to do it over the year, over the season, or over the pre-season when you're having it, you'll have designated coaches taking them for certain situations. And they'll be training at certain days. And they'll be in the gym on one day, they'll be doing this on, and probably three times in the week they'll do a good session to maintain, not to get fit, to maintain, because sometimes the break is really good, the rest is really good sometimes. So you don't want to overtrain them, but because you've got such a short space of time before your next game, you can't allow them to lose so much. You can't have them having a 6-week break and coming back and playing in 2 weeks' time. You need to maintain a certain level of fitness. So when you only got 3 weeks to work on them, you don't have to do all that's been done in the break.
At the point that we went on that 2-month break for the World Cup, we had played about 14 matches. I think all the teams, we were just short of the halfway mark. At that point, as a coach, are you settled on your best 11?
You know, Titi, I can tell you right now, just by watching the teams play, that Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates don't really know their best team just yet. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not the coach's fault they don't know it. They haven't had enough time. Okay, there's been a stop-start. And that's possibly why I asked the question earlier on, is why is Sundowns 14 points in front? It's because Chiefs and Pirates are probably trying to prepare and get their best team. And by next year, they should be able to have their best team and maybe it'll be more competitive. But you know, with Sundowns, they put one play, the player knows that when the coach says, listen, we're going to play a hard-pressing game, it's a trigger, they all know when to do it. When he goes, everybody knows that they have to do that. Or when he doesn't do it, they don't do it. So they're all on a song on how they're going to play. Pirates and Chiefs are still learning that. When one's going to press, other one stays back. He's pressing, running like this, and the other two are on the wrong place because they haven't had enough time to practice it. So without making an excuse for any of those teams, they are institutions, Pirates and Sundowns. I think they're going to get it right. I think they're going to definitely get it right, but they haven't had the time. Farouk mentioned earlier on the pandemic was a major blow, stop-start. That really was a tough time for our football. Now it's slowly getting back, but unfortunately the World Cup was great. It was great to have the World Cup, but unfortunately for those teams, they weren't able to continue to be at a stage where the team knows exactly how to play. Now it's about winning something. they're still teaching players, or not teaching, but more trying to get them to understand the ethos, how we play, what is our pattern, how do we do this, how do we do that. When we play a hard game, we play like this. When we play low, when we don't press, we come back, this is where we go. We don't go over the halfway line, we don't do it. And they know it. I can see some people are making mistakes and that's costing them. They go to close down when they shouldn't be closing down, and the rest of the team don't know what he's doing and why is he doing that. But he's not supposed to do that. So half of them know it, half of them don't know it. And that is probably one of the biggest things, Farouk, that's happened to those two teams.
Right. So then the World Cup comes and goes. We have to get back into the action. We're back to the resumption of the Premiership for both the Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. And of course, it also means an examination of your playing personnel because the transfer window opens just soon after the restart. Coach, you look at where we are today, and I mean, you can kind of, it becomes apparent where the challenges lie. Let's look at, from a Kaizer Chiefs point of view, they sit with 18 goals after 17 matches and 21 conceded. Clearly, there's problems both back and in terms of, or there are challenges both at the back and at the front. You want more goals, and you need to stop giving away goals.
Well, I think you need to take an audit. You have two of the finest players in the PSL in Dolly and Billiard. I think you have to get to a point where they either realize their potential or you replace them. And I'm being a bit blatantly honest about it. Because you can't hang on to players like that who earn huge sums and they're not delivering from match to match. So if you're going to buy another player which is surplus to requirements, and you already have Caleb, which you signed the Burundian to fill that gap, and 2 or 3 months down the line you realize he's not delivering, out of the 7 goals he scored, 4 or 5 of them have been penalties, then surely you've got to think very hard before you just go into the market and sign. You've got to find the right exact fit that will add value, because there is quality in that team. I mean, they do have quality. They have players like Nobo from the academy, which I rate highly. I think generally overall Mart, phenomenal player that came on board. And so you can't fault them for the signings. But signing players is one thing. You've got to ensure, and this is what I'm sure Arthur will be doing, to look that you are able to make those players gel as a unit, because football is a team sport. It's not golf. It's not tennis where you on your own deciding how to play. I depend on Gordon, Gordon depends on you, we depend on each other. Because it's a team sport, we work for each other. So I think that is the missing link. Defensively, there's been a lot of errors. And we earlier when I mentioned Dolby, you said you're going to get to that point. It's a classical example. Dolby is one of your finest attacking fullbacks. He's now being converted. And in the last game, he made some critical errors against Amazulu, 2 goals which cost them. He's maybe not comfortable there. Chiefs need to sign a very experienced left central defender.
And they've done just that. They've been getting Tataya or Nelly Togo from Supersport.
So that could be the solution there, and I hope it is, because I think it's so needed in that defense. When they signed Nobo, who became the best defender in the PSL from Swallows, we expected him to fit in. But playing for Swallows, with all due respect, and playing for Chiefs, there's different expectations. It's a different ball game altogether. The other thing with Zwane coming in now, he's a young player. You know, he needs to be an understudy to a Tinashe Nyangomash. So in the spine, I always believe the spine is critical. Your goalkeeper, your central defender, your central midfielder, your striker. You need to have somebody very capable of complementing Mart. Because Mart is trying a lot of things now. So that confusion that Gordon alluded to, that synchronization of players is lacking, because nobody knows what the next guy is going to do. So you find there's little gaps and pockets that's being exploited, and we've seen it even against Sundowns. I think Chiefs created many chances. So they did against Amazulu, so they did against Bukuni, but they lost all 3 games. So that's where the whole puzzle needs to get together, where you take that quality of players and you get them to a situation where they gel and play as a unit. Buying players can assist in the process forward, but it is not the answer. It's not the solution. You still got to ensure that your team plays as a unit and are able to function as one entity.
Right, as we record this, Orlando Pirates were sitting with a slightly different problem from Kaizer Chiefs. Similarly with Chiefs, the goals aren't flowing, but they have the advantage that their defense has been fairly solid, Coach. I think the 4th best defense at the time that we are speaking here. But they've gone into the market a little bit. They've gone and strengthened in attacking. I mean, they've just signed the Cameroonian Saibu Maru, who's an international, was at the World Cup, unused sub on the bench at the World Cup. But goals were a problem, but Pirates were creating chances, especially in the early on in the season. So when you now have to reinforce, are you thinking that I need a finisher? I can't be creating this many chances and not scoring them?
Yeah, I think Jose is on the right track in the sense of Orlando Pirates is a team that wants to attack. They want to attack. And sometimes you see everybody going and they're very athletic, they can get back, they work hard together as a unit. It doesn't mean necessarily that if you're conceding goals, your defense is bad. It means more of an understanding that when this player goes, I know I can't go, I need to tuck in for him. And when it breaks down, we're going to be sorted. We're not going to have our court and the defenders are not doing their job. I might be a defender marking this player and there's a player running with the ball all alone. I'm going to leave my player and go do that. Then this player gets the ball and he ends up scoring and it's my fault because I'm a defender, but I was doing somebody else's job. So I think Jose has got the correct ideas of wanting to go forward. I think he's got the work with a good work ethic. They're working back. If you see their team work going forward and going backwards, they really work very, very hard. So they always are a team that I think is going to be the team closer to challenging the Sundowns next season, because it looks like they're doing the right things on the field.
And when you sign a striker at this time of the season, I mean, especially when you are under pressure to get goals, the adjustment, especially to a new league, is that a big challenge now? Here we were dealing with a young player who's coming into a new league.
And he's coming into a big team. He's not just coming into a team where he's expected to be. He's got to prove himself now. The coach has got to give him opportunities to play. He's got to fit in. And there again, we're going to start all over. He's starting to get used to understanding how the rest of the team play. So it's another 5 months before he's really at peak. So, as we talk in here, you can see it just compounds the problems that coaches have during this last period of time. So I hope he's a good signing for them. I haven't seen him play before, but let's see going forward. But as I said, Orlando Pirates offensively are really a very good team. They miss a lot of chances, as you know. They create, sometimes they could have been 5 up and they haven't scored a goal, and then they score one, the opposition score one, they're fighting to come back into the game. So I'm sure that the coach has seen this. And I'm sure that's the reason why he signed the player. And I'm sure, I hope he's the kind of player that can also play with his back to goals a little bit, to bring midfield players in, because everybody's going all the time. You need sometimes a ball played in the box, but it can be slowed down and you can bring midfield players in. So someone who can really play these back to goals. Yeah,
well, I'm thinking the Buccaneers will be hopeful that they've turned the corner. Maybe now that the goals will start to flow, because after 16 matches, Pirates had scored just 13 goals. Can you believe it? And then now they've made that, they've improved on that to 17 goals scored now, 4 of them coming in the game, their game against Stellies. So perhaps that's a good platform on which to build when you bring on a youngster who's, in the form of Maru, as I said, the experience of soaking up the atmosphere there at the World Cup. Kaizer Chiefs coach have also brought in a new striker, Christian Salier, I think that's the Saile is the name is going to go by. That's the name on the back of the shirt, Saile. Player with Champions League experience, again a striker, needs to settle in. Hopefully that shouldn't be too difficult, because as a French speaker, he's Congolese. They've already got Bimenyi Mana to help him settle with that. I mean, Keegan Dolly speaks about 55 languages, so he shouldn't be too lost. But in terms of solving their goal score, Chiefs are also creating, but just haven't been as clinical.
Yeah, I think bringing in a quality striker of his caliber is going to be a huge plus. It depends entirely on how his individual role is going to be complemented by the likes of Mart, Dupree, etc. Because you're only as good as the players that give you that service. The best strikers in the world are dependent on the players around them. And I do think that sometimes a striker is not necessarily the one to score the goals. He could create spaces with his movement. He could create opportunities for third man runs from midfield. And I think if he can do that effectively, I think you remember when we were at Chiefs, we had a player called David Khadebe. Didn't score many goals, but because of his movement and his work rate, Collins Bissouma ended up becoming the highest goal scorer that season, 30-odd goals. The following season, we had Black Jesus coming in, and he played from a wide attacking position, Skarango Bese. Also a player that was very elaborate, but not effective. So what we got him to do is do less on the ball and look to go forward, and he became the best player that season. So I think the players around the new signing Sile is going to have to work on a plan, the coaches, that let him distract opponents at times. Eventually, when he starts scoring, it will become a habit. But if you expect him to hit the ground running and just start banging in goals, then you're going to put undue pressure on him because now the focus is going to be on him, like it was on Caleb. When Caleb started scoring, now the fans are now up in arms against Caleb. He's useless. He's missed 2 goals. It's not as easy as it looks, and I personally believe strikers are going to miss. But it's not how many they miss. It's how many they are able to convert from those 10, 12 misses. So we must allow strikers that luxury of missing, but at the same time not put undue pressure on them. And this is where I think the technical staff must come in and say, guys, let's carry this guy through the transition of the next 2 or 3 months. Let him get comfortable. Once he gets, and I'm saying this based on what we did with Collins. Collins didn't hit the ground running. At first, when we got there, Mushin hardly used him. When Ted got there, he started getting used more often. But then already he got used to the teammates, he got used to the players, he got used to the style of play. You know, he understood the philosophy. From where he was in Zambia to now, there was a change. But now because of the crisis, TT, are we going to expect this guy to hit the ground running? Maybe he would. I hope he does. But if he doesn't, you've got to exercise patience.
What is the conversation you have, Coach, with your strikers? You know, when he's battling a little bit, he's not finishing the chances that he should be. Of course, when you're a team like Chiefs and Pirates, that comes with a lot of pressure. The crowds get on your back, and that can make it even more difficult.
Now you got to, the first thing what's important for me to say here is that I think both Chiefs and Pirates, we talk about those 2 teams in particular because they are, as I said earlier on, they're great teams and they can be great teams. There's got to be a time when you draw the line and say, I'm not signing any more players. We've got to work with what we've got. We've signed these players this 6 months. We've got them now to work with them until the end of the season. Next season, I'm not going to go buy. You can't buy success. You've got to work for it. And now you've got to mold these players. So these players they've all signed now. They've got to say, these players are here for 3 years. You signed them. You're the coach. You're the manager. You've done this. You've done that. Now we put our team together. Let's work on this team for the next 3 years. In those 3 years, we're going to win the championship. We need to build this team up. You can't say, oh, we had a bad season, let's sign another 5 players. You sign another 5 players, you're still exactly where you are. You haven't moved anywhere forward. So, if they sign another 5 players, they got to sign and work with these players now for the next 3 years, and you'll see one of them will win the league in the next coming years.
Enough motivation for you, Coach, knowing that, look, it looks difficult at this stage. Sundowns seem to be disappearing into the distance. For Chiefs and Pirates, is there enough motivation to say that are you already talking about playing for second, or are you going to just push to the bitter end?
Well, I wouldn't like to see this becoming a farmers' league where that happens. I think the capacity, the support, the infrastructure of these 2 giants is big enough. It's not the first time. Sundowns in the past were dominant. But then coaches like Gordon came along, won the league. Coaches like Ted came along, won the league. They are beatable. They are beatable at the top. But what I like about what Gordon says, you can't expect to build success overnight. You've got to look at the score, work with the score for a season or 2, and then you will see the results. I think too often we want to change the personnel based on the fact that these guys are not good enough. So why in the first place did you sign them? Your scouting has to be spot on. You got to look at the player over a period of time. Not when he plays against you, he has a good game. Okay, I'm going to sign so and so. So I think that introspection is probably an area they need to look at. If they do sign, they must know it's the proper fit, and they must know they're going to keep him, as Gordon said, for the next 2 or 3 years, and bring the best out. Because if you look at the market, they've lost millions on signing players that were misses. Why not go with a core of players, believe in the process, and ensure that the process is planned? Your periodization can be a year, it can be 4 years of a World Cup. So use the 3 or 4 year program and say to the fans, listen, give us an opportunity now to build a strong enough team to compete. And this is where Sundowns come in. They've built this team. Yes, they've made good signings, but they've made signings to add value. But in any given time, they could play any of those players and still get a positive result.
Coach Farouk Khan and Gordon Igesund, great having your insights and picking your brains on this very interesting subject. Thank you so much, as always, for your insights, and great catching up with you.
It's always a pleasure, Titi.
Yeah, our great pleasure. Thanks very much.
There you have it. You've heard it from 2 men who've been there and done that, literally won championships with both Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. Well, both these 2 giants of South African football have their work cut out if they are to haul in Mamelodi Sundowns. But as we know, nothing is impossible in this game. Stranger things have happened. They've got the remainder of the season to kick on. They've got a full, now they've strengthened their squads. We'll have to wait and see what they can do. That will do it for another Vodacom Sisonke Diski Chat. Be sure to to join us again next time. I'm your host, TT Tabisote. But till next time, cheers.